You're listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast.
You're listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast. My name is Shawn Wilkie, and along with my awesome co-host, we interview the innovators in this space every week. Ivan, please go ahead and get us started.
Hey, I'm Ivan Zach, and I'm really excited about our guest today. It is a friend of mine and a colleague, Dr. Andrew Ciccolini. Andrew is a dynamic leader who oversees veterinary operations teams and improvement initiatives. He's a director of Galaxy Vets Foundation, medical director at the National Mill Dog Rescue, and a major in the U.S. Army National Guard. Andrew has been a veterinarian for 12 years, working across the United States and the world. His passions in veterinary medicine are nonprofit work, teaching and mentoring, soft tissue surgery, and dentistry. Passions in his personal life are rugby, snowboarding, and hiking. Andrew, thank you for finding the time.
Thank you both for having me. I'm really excited to share what we've been doing with the Galaxy Vets Foundation.
So let's start there. Obviously, by the name, you could think or have a suspicion that it's somehow related to Galaxy Vets. And tell us about the Galaxy Vets Foundation. And since it's a veterinary innovation podcast, what was innovative about approaching this project, and what did it do for the world?
Yeah, so Galaxy Vets Foundation started almost a year ago, and obviously the connection to Galaxy Vets is the nonprofit arm for Galaxy Vets, which is I'm sure anybody that listens to this show already knows, but it's a newer veterinary healthcare system within North America. And they had long-term goals for having a nonprofit, but the war in Ukraine kind of brought this to the forefront in the beginning stages of the company's formation. And we started it to provide help to pet owners within Ukraine. And we thought, well, how can we do that? We're a veterinary company. We have telehealth as one of our growth initiatives planned for the future. Well, maybe we can provide that to pet owners within Ukraine. And we started that up, and it has been a huge success. That's the innovative part of it, is we're providing veterinary telehealth with volunteers from all over the world to people within Ukraine. And we've been able to help over 11,000 families, answering 30,000 different questions on their pets. And people have just been extremely grateful, and nobody's ever done something like this in veterinary medicine before.
You're certainly very exciting, Andrew, and I really appreciate you jumping in and helping us to stand this up, because first, when it started, everybody started doing something. It felt like, the war in Ukraine. And by the way, a huge shout out to all the Ukrainians out there, my Ukrainian team, and everybody who is helping Ukrainians, because today is the anniversary of the war in Ukraine. This is exactly a year ago when Russian barbaric invasion started, and it didn't end yet. Huge shout out to people that defend Ukraine and all the world that is helping them. But it was very interesting because we tried to use different telehealth platforms, and we actually went with a sort of an interesting approach to it. Can you describe the technology, how we handled it, and how does this work, and who's involved, what does it look like, and where do we take vets, and how do we interact with the clients?
And what's your favorite color, and what kind of car do you drive? Just to ask you like 300 questions at the same time. Good luck.
Sure. My favorite color is blue. I drive a Ford Mustang Mach-E. It's an electric car. And the telehealth platform has been one of the biggest challenges, the technology piece, because the system doesn't really exist right now for what we were trying to do. A lot of the veterinary telehealth platforms are video based, but because we're dealing with different languages, we really need a translation function, because we have very few people that speak Ukrainian volunteering with us. So how are we going to be able to provide this service to people? So we really needed a chat-based platform. And we looked, and there's just nothing out there designed specifically for veterinary telemedicine. So we use a platform called Live Chat, which is really just designed to allow people to ask questions on like a website of your company. But we've kind of did our best to make it work. And I mean, we've seen the success. We've answered 30,000 questions, but it does come with challenges. So there's really a need for a development of a better platform going forward.
It's really interesting. And so does that platform do the real-time translations using like Google Translations, or how do you bridge the gap between the chatting and the understanding?
Great question. And when we first started it has a translation integrated into it. So person in Ukraine types in their language, it translates for the volunteer, same thing back the other way. And then we started adding all these integrations to reach people better. So live chat will connect to Facebook or to Telegram so people can talk to us through whatever messaging platform is they're used to. And that translation function started to break down. So when someone talks to us through Facebook, for whatever reason, the translation just won't work. And it's a problem on Facebook's end, so we can't get it fixed. And that's where 90% of our questions come from. So our volunteers have to copy and paste from Google Translate to answer these questions for people.
Wow, that sounds like an unbelievable like technology like burden, but also kind of fascinating as well. So, what kind of questions and inquiries? Like, if is there a top five like that you guys have had out of these 30,000?
Yeah, I think initially we didn't really know, and we were preparing people for worst case scenario questions like significant trauma and injured by a rocket attack, things like that. And we've had a few of those, but not many. It's been a lot of the same things you would expect if you were running telehealth here. People are just don't have access to a vet, so when they have a skin problem, they're asking questions about the skin. If the dog has vomiting, diarrhea, it's really the same top 5 questions that you would expect anywhere else, with a few more complicated ones mixed in here and there.
Which is very interesting because what we've tried to do is to solve this problem, but along the way, we actually experienced a lot of the things that we would need for launching our telehealth platform, and there's a lot of learning in that. So I found that because of our lack of limitation on jurisdiction, the VCPR, we actually could model and practice a lot, well, 30,000 times with the clients. And it's really not only the injured animals, but it's anybody who needs access to veterinary care. And the North American veterinary community was extremely generous, providing their help and their volunteering their time to answer these things. So it actually was a great model. Not only it was a humanitarian purpose, but also it created an sort of a like a beta environment for us where we could learn a lot from this. Andrew, how do you think this is applicable to any other disasters going forward? If we hopefully we don't have any in the world, but if we do you think it's applicable? And also, how do you think this will advance once the war is over?
I think we've learned a lot, and we've really proven that this type of platform can be hugely beneficial in an emergency or natural disaster, really anything throughout the world. And when the earthquakes in Turkey and Syria happened, pretty recently, we kind of talked within the team like, hey, is this something we could launch for a response there? And we all thought it was a good idea, but we just didn't really have the capacity yet. I think in the future, our goal is to have this platform more developed, and we have our volunteer base that anytime there's a disaster anywhere in the world or the United States, we can launch within a few hours. We just have to spin up a platform specific for that location, reach out to our volunteers, and we could probably start providing help to pet owners immediately. Because think about what typically happens in a disaster. Most of the time you don't have a lot of advance notice. Maybe a hurricane, you might know a few days in advance. How long does it take help to get somewhere? Especially in the veterinary space, there's not teams sitting around waiting to respond to disaster. People have to coordinate things to take off time from work to be able to travel there and provide veterinary support, or you have to rely on the local veterinarians, but they're also dealing with their family emergency. So how can we get help faster? Well, we can launch telehealth. Everybody has a cell phone. Internet service stays up in a disaster or brought back up pretty fast, and they can get help right away through this platform. So that's how I see this evolving going forward.
It's so fascinating. I mean, the work that you guys are doing, like, I want to applaud you on the audience behalf because I'm sure they're thinking like, holy moly, this is so cool. The question I've got for you, Andrew, right now is like, you said the tools were not great. You guys have like, jammed some things together to make it work. And that's really fascinating in and of itself. But how do you get the message out to the people that are on the ground that have these emergencies? How is that spread? Like 30,000 is a lot of questions. So like, how do people even find out that they can reach out to you guys when they're in the disaster zone or in Ukraine in this case?
That's actually a great question. In Ukraine, we actually pay for advertising through Facebook and Telegram to get the message out and let people know, like, hey, this is here. If you need us, we're available. And over time, it develops and word of mouth spreads as well. But we've actually paid for advertising to make sure people knew we were available.
Wow, that's fascinating. And then I guess the next question is like, you guys have obviously launched this foundation. How are you funding this? And what has been the response of funders and people that wanted to help you guys help the people of Ukraine?
Yeah, fundraising is always the biggest challenge in nonprofit work. And we've relied almost entirely on individual donations. So, not necessarily advertising, but posting through social media and just asking for donations. And people have been incredibly generous and helped keeping us operational. But it's tough to plan long term when you're relying on individual donations. So, we're also applying for grants. Our hope is that we can find a corporate sponsor that might kind of join in and help us build this telehealth platform for future use. But our fundraising is no different than any other nonprofit. It's relying on people and different events and ways to raise money and keep us going.
Your kind hearts out there. So, I mean, that's an obvious tee up if I ever heard of one. If people want to help, if people in our audience are listening there and they'd say, hey, I've got some money that I'd like to put towards this, or maybe I'm one of these corporate sponsors, how would they do that?
Yeah, the Galaxy Vets Foundation webpage is the easiest way. If you're an individual just looking to donate, the button will be right there, front and center. And if you're a corporate entity looking to partner with us, there's a contact form you can reach out. That'll go directly to me. And I would love to talk to anybody interested in making a more robust partnership.
So, Andrew, now that we have this experience, what is the future of this for the North American side of things? Because we were thinking about this as a future project a couple of years down the road, but as you said, disasters don't happen on schedule. But where could we take all of this great learning and bring it forward to North America?
I think there's two answers to that going forward. The one we kind of touched on already is having this disaster response platform available for North America, which is challenging given all the regulations in different states, but not insurmountable. And we won't necessarily go into those. I think people would fall asleep on the podcast talking about regulations. But the second one is, our goal with the foundation is not just disaster response. That was just the first need that arose. We really want to provide resources for pet owners that prevent economic euthanasia. So if you're not familiar with the term, it means someone has to euthanize their pet with a condition that's potentially treatable. And economics are one of I would say, the top 2 or 3 reasons as to why they're choosing euthanasia. Not only is that obviously bad for the pet, it's a huge emotional trauma for the pet owner and also the veterinary professionals that are involved in that. And so Galaxy Vets is very involved in trying to prevent employee burnout. And so this is one way we can help with that. So the foundation wants to find solutions to prevent economic euthanasia within North America.
Andrew, you are connected with quite a few people in the domain and with some nonprofit initiatives. I remember we interviewed Amy St. Arnaud, and she had very interesting approach to how to run a nonprofit clinic. Do you think there's a collaboration out there between the nonprofit and for-profit organization that can actually be a partnership that helps both for-profit business and the nonprofit?
Absolutely. And you're right. I've connected with Amy and her organization, the Open Door Veterinary Collective, as well as a company called Vet Billing, to come up with different ideas around preventing economic euthanasia. Because what do you typically see at a veterinary hospital? They might have a little collection jar and they make what we call an angel fund, and it has a couple $100 available. And if a owner comes in and they can't afford the, emergency foreign body surgery, they have $400 they can contribute to that and try to help prevent it. And so that model is really money intensive. If you raise $5,000, that could be wiped out in one case, right? Like an emergency case can get expensive real fast. So what's a different way of going about that? So what we want to do is, instead of an angel fund, we raise these funds, convince private practices to offer payment plans for owners when they really need it for cases of significant quality of life or potential death. And payment plans are a dirty word within veterinary medicine. Not a lot of people like them. So what the foundation would do is be a backstop for that. And if they offer these payment plans to people and they default, that's where we would step in and provide the financial backing. And Amy and her Open Door Veterinary Collective has done the research to show that you can help 14 times more per dollar with that model as opposed to just providing the financial grant to that family.
And that also leads to certain benefits in the taxation, right? Because if the foundation then Well, that's the foundation backing into it as well. But then the business can also donate to foundation and essentially have the credit through the tax, right? Is that how it works?
Absolutely. So if the company, say someone defaulted and the foundation was paying the bill, they could, wipe off, say, 10% of that as like a tax write-off, just to help, decrease the cost of the foundation. And that's kind of their contribution as well.
That's so fascinating. I mean, there's a lot of great work to be done. And I mean, the economic euthanasia is a real hairy problem. I want to go back to this technology stack, Andrew, and just because we have so many people listen to the show now, like if you were to pick a perfect platform for this type of help that you guys are providing through the Galaxy Vet Foundation, what's missing with what you have right now, just in case it's out there and somebody knows about it?
Yeah, if it does, I haven't seen it, but I think there's a couple of things we need. Simplicity of use is one, a lack of restrictions on agent seats. So, we were restricted to 20 agent seats for our platform, but we have 300 volunteers. So we're constantly trying to pass around those agent seats to different people. So that makes it really tough. And we need that translation function to work. And really, it needs to be just about any language, right? Because a disaster could happen anywhere. And if you wait until that disaster happens, like, no one would have thought like, hey, Turkey's going to be the next disaster. Let me have that language stacked and ready to go. So you need that in there in advance. And it would be helpful if there was a combination of chat function and video chat function, because sometimes it would be helpful to see the pet, even if you don't speak the same language. As long as you can type chat as well, still being able to do that. It's hard to find both in one platform.
That's cool. Well, if it's out there and get in touch with Andrew, please. He wants it now. Andrew, listen, this is a great episode. Thanks for all that you guys are doing. It's amazing. And I'm sure it gives a lot of people a lot of hope. So thanks for everything that you're doing. We like to wrap up every episode the same way. We got a couple questions for you. So a book, YouTube video, a TED Talk, something that you find inspiring.
I think one of my favorite books is called The Mission, The Men, and Me. It's a military-based book. I have a military background, but I think it has a lot of leadership lessons for everybody. And the main message I get from it is that when you're leading, you need to listen to the people on the ground. And in disaster work, that's very, very important, because if you're not there seeing what's going on, you have to trust the people on the ground and believe them when they tell you what it is that they need.
And the second question that we ask is there guests that you would recommend to be on this show?
Yeah, I actually recommend my current boss at the National Mill Dog Rescue. She's retiring soon. She's been in nonprofit work. Her name's Kim Lehman for 15 years, and she's been running operations at that facility, a couple $1 million a year nonprofit. So if you want to learn more about how nonprofits work, can't think of anyone better than someone who's been in the trenches for 15 years.
Thank you so much for listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast. If you want to hear about our new episodes, please follow us on any social media channel. Also, you can check out our website at veterinaryinnovationpodcast.com. See you next week.